Hello student, today we are going to start the second part of chapter 6. This is Geordie's Found. So, in the second part, Geordie, he gave himself over to thoughts of the fawn. They passed the abandoned clearing. He said, "Cut to the north, Millville. It was up here that Pa got beaten by the snake and killed the doe, and I saw the fawn." Suddenly Geordie was unwilling to have Millville with him. If the fawn was dead or could not be found, he could not have his disappointment seen. And if the fawn was there, the meeting would be so lovely and so secret that he could not endure to share it. So student, in this paragraph, Geordie, he engaged himself in thinking about the fawn. They crossed a deserted piece of land in the forest. Geordie, he gave directions as he told Millville to turn towards the north where Penny, he got bitten by a snake. He had killed the doe and seen the fawn there only. All of a sudden, Geordie became unwilling to be with Millville. He wondered if the fawn was dead or could not be found. He did not want Millville to see his disappointment. On the other hand, if he found the fawn, the union would be so lovely and personal that he could not bring himself to share it. So, in the second paragraph, he said, "It's not far now, but the scrub is very thick for a horse. I can make it on foot. But I'm afraid to leave you, boy. Suppose you got lost or got bitten by the snake too? I will take care. It might take me a long time to find the fawn if he's wandered. Leave me off right here." "All right, but you take it easy now. You know north here and east. There's and there. That tall pine makes a bearing. So long, Millville. I'm obliged." So Geordie told Millville that the point where he saw the fawn is not very far now. Geordie suggested that he would go on by foot as the scrubs ahead are very thick for a horse. Millville was afraid to leave Geordie alone, as what would happen if he got lost or bitten by a snake too? Geordie assures him that he will handle it and also that it might take a while for him to find the fawn in case he's wandered further. He told Millville to leave him nearby. Millville follows his direction and advises him to make it easy. He asks Geordie if he is aware where the north and east side. Geordie told him by pointing out the directions that he knows and that the tall pine acts as a compass that helps in identifying directions. Millville remarks that the pine is so long, to which Geordie agrees and expresses his gratefulness. Now, he waited for the sound of the hoofs to end, then cut to the right. The scrub was still. Only his own crackling of twigs sounded across the silence. He wondered for an instant if he had mistaken his direction. Then a buzzard rose in front of him and flapped into the air. He came into the clearing under the oaks. Buzzards sat in a circle around the carcass of the doe. They turned their heads on their long, scrawny necks and hissed at him. He threw him bow at them, and then they flew into an adjacent tree. The sand showed large cat prints, but the big cats killed fresh, and they had left the doe to the carrion birds. So, Geordie, he waited for the sound of hoofs to end and let the horse go a bit far and then take a right. The scrub that was in front of him stood still. Only the sound of a few twigs could be heard in the silence. Geordie doubted for a second if he had mistaken his direction. A large bird, like a vulture, appeared in front of him and fluttered into the air. He came to abandoned clearing from under the oaks. They sat in a circle around the doe that laid dead. They looked at him with their heads that laid on their long necks and hissed at him. Geordie, he threw his bow at them and they flew into a nearby tree. The sand, it showed marks of a large cat footprints who had killed it recently and had left the door for the carrion birds. So now, the last paragraph of the second part. He parted the grass at the place where he had seen the fawn. It did not seem possible that it was only yesterday. The fawn was not there. He circled the clearing. There was no sound, no sign. The buzzards clacked their wings, impatient to return to their business. He returned to the spot where the fawn had emerged and dropped on all fours, studying the sand for the small hoof prints. The night's rain had washed away all tracks except those of cats and buzzards. So, Geordie, he separated the grass from the place where he saw the fawn the previous day. He could not believe it had just been a day. The fawn was not at that place. Geordie, he searched the abandoned land, but there was no sign and sound of one. On the other hand, the buzzards made sound with their wings out of the desperation to resume what they were doing. Geordie began looking at the place where the fawn had appeared from and began reading the small hoof prints in the sand, but the rain from last night had washed away all tracks except for cats and buzzards. Now, coming to the third part, first paragraph. Movement directly in front of him startled him so that he tumbled backward. The fawn lifted its face to his. It turned its head with a wide, wondering motion and shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. It was quivering, it made no effort to rise or run. Geordie could not trust himself to move, he whispered, "It's me." The fawn lifted its nose, scenting him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. The touch made him delirious. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. He put his arms around its body. A light convulsion passed over it, but it did not stir. So, student, Geordie, he was very shocked after having experienced some movement in front of him and he fell backwards. It was the fawn. The fawn lifted his face with a wide and wondering motion to see Geordie and stared at him with his liquid eyes that is left Judy shocked. The fawn was shaking with a slight rapid motion. The fawn was still and made no effort to run. On the other hand, Geordie could not move too, but he whispered lightly, "It's me." The fawn sniffled and smelled him. Geordie reached out with his hand and laid it on his soft neck. His touch made the fawn excited and he moved forward in an attempt to be close to Geordie. Geordie, he put his arms around the fawn, which made the fawn shiver slightly, but he did not stir, which means he was not frightened but comforted. So after that, he stroked its sides as gently as though the fawn were a china deer and he might break it. Its skin was very soft. It was sleek and clean and had a sweet scent of grass. He rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. Its leg hung limply. They were surprisingly long and he had to hoist the fawn as high as possible under his arm. So, student, Geordie, he carries the sides of his body so gently as if it were as fragile as a china deer. The fawn was soft, sleek, clean, and even possessed a pleasant scent of grass. Geordie lifted the fawn from the ground in a way that hung his limbs in the air. The fawn's legs were quite long, so Geordie had to hold him as high as possible under his arm. Now, he was afraid that it might kick and bleat at sight and smell of its mother. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. It was difficult to fight through his burden. The fawn's leg caught in the bushes and he could not lift his own with freedom. He tried to shield its face from prickling vines. Its head bobbed with his stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He stopped to rest and set the fawn down on its dangling legs. It waved on them. It looked at him and bleated. So he said, enchanted, I will carry you. After I get my breath, he remembered his father saying that a fawn would follow if it had been carried. He started away slowly. The fawn stared after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. It took a few wobbling steps towards him and cried piteously. It was willing to follow him. It belonged to him. It was his own. He was light-headed with his joy. He wanted to fondle it, to run and romp with it, to call to it to come to him. He dared not alarm it. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. So, Geordie, he was really filled with delight as he was told the found that he could carry it once he had taken a bit of rest. Geordie, he recalled that his father had told him that found will follow you once you have carried it for a bit first. Geordie started walking at a slow pace and the found he looked as he walked further. Geordie came back again to caress it and went forward again. This time the fawn took a few weak steps in Geordie's direction as he cried. Although wobbling, Geordie was overjoyed by the fact that it was willing to go with him, which made the fawn his own. He was so overjoyed that he could not even think properly and clearly. At that moment, Geordie wanted to carcass it with all his desires, play with it and call it towards him, but he did not want to frighten it. Then he picked the fawn again in his arms and walked effortlessly, or at least that is what he thought. Now his arm began to ache and he was forced to stop again. When he walked on, the fawn followed him at once. He allowed it to walk a little distance, then picked it up again. The distance home was nothing. He could have walked all day and into the night, carrying it with and watching it follow. He was wet with sweat, but a light breeze blew through the June morning, cooling him. The sky was as clear as spring water in a blue china cup. He came to the clearing. It was fresh and green after the night's rain. He fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set down the fawn to manage it. Then he had an idea. He would walk into the house into Penny's bedroom with the fawn walking behind him. But at the steps, the fawn balked and refused to climb them. He picked it up and went to his father. Penny lay with closed eyes. So, student, Geordie, he stopped unwillingly as his arms had started aching. The fawn followed him as he walked again. Geordie would only allow the fawn to walk a few steps and then pick it up again. Home was almost near. Geordie could have picked it up and watched it follow all day, but he was tired and sweating. A light breeze helped him dry his sweat on that June morning. The sky was so clear that it had been compared to spring water in a blue china cup. He reached the clearing at last, which was green and fresh after the showers last night. It was a bit difficult for him to open the latch of the house, but he could do it once he set the fawn down. At first, he thought of making the fawn follow directly into Penny's room and surprise him, but the fawn refused to climb the stairs, so Geordie had to pick him up to his father's bedroom. His dad was resting with closed eyes. Then Geordie he called. Pa, look! Penny turned his head. Geordie stood beside him. The fawn clutched hard against him. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were as bright as the fawn's. He said, I'm glad you found him. So, Geordie, he woke his father up and stood beside as Penny turned his head towards him. The fawn grasped him firmly. Penny could see Geordie's eyes as bright and glowing as the fawn's. Penny expressed his happiness over Geordie's having been able to find the fawn. Now, Geordie then went to the kitchen. The fawn wobbled after him. A pan of morning's milk stood in the kitchen safe. The cream had risen on it. He skimmed the cream into the jug. He poured milk into a small gourd. He held it out to the fawn. It buttered it suddenly, smelling the milk. He saved it precariously from spilling over the floor. It could make nothing of the milk in the gourd. So, Geordie, he went straight to the kitchen after that, and then the fawn he also followed him with his weak steps. In the kitchen, a pan was filled with morning's milk, which was kept reserved, but cream had formed on it. He skimmed the cream and put it into a jug while he poured the milk into a utensil made of small gourd. The fawn sniffed the milk as Geordie saved the milk from the being spilled. The fawn could not drink the milk out of the gourd. Now, see what happened. So, he dipped his fingers in the milk and thrust them into the fawn's soft, wet mouth. It sucked greedily. When he withdrew it bleated frantically and buttered him. He dipped his finger again, and as the fawn sucked, he lowered them slowly into the milk. The fawn blew and sucked and snorted. It stamped its small hoofs impatiently as long as he held his fingers below the level of the milk. The fawn was content. It closed its eyes dreamily. It was ecstasy to feel its tongue against his hand. Its small tail flickered back and forth. The last of the milk vanished in a swirl of foam and gurgling. So, Geordie, he dipped his fingers in the milk and he put them into its soft wet mouth, instantly which the fawn sucked greedily. He was hungry, which is why when Geordie took his fingers out of its mouth, it cried and hit him with his head. The next time Geordie put his fingers in the fawn's mouth, he gently lowered it so as to bring it near the utensil. The fawn became impatient, blew the milk as he sucked it and made sound. The fawn was calm till Geordie kept his fingers inside the milk and he drank with eyes closed in the satisfaction. Geordie, he felt overwhelmed on feeling its tongue against his hand as his small tail moved back and forth. The milk disappeared quickly, forming foam, which was marked by a bubbling sound. So, student, this lesson it takes us through Geordie's journey from finding the fawn till taking it home with him. Thank you, student.